Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Getting Back to Work in Nevada, webinar for reopening of restaurants during phase one of the recovery. I'm Chris Lynch, and I'm the director of the Nevada Business Environmental Program. We provide statewide environmental assistance and help businesses with compliance and environmental sustainability. So, we've gotten involved in the recovery as part of the, choosing safer cleaners and disinfectants, and just taking a look at, what a business can do to make sure that the recovery goes well for them. This morning, what we wanted to cover is there are some challenges in terms of reopening, and we want to provide some an overview this morning of the guidelines that were released by the governor's office, and then go into a local case study about what one restaurant in Nevada is doing to meet the new guidelines and some of the new best practices. And then talk a little bit about some of the business basics and the business tips for making sure that your business stays open and can weather the storm as we go through the recovery process. So again, thank you for joining us this morning. So real quickly, what I wanted to do, and there's going to be a little bit of redundancy in this, but I think it's kind of necessary. We just want to go through what the requirements are going to be for reopening. So on May 7th, the governor's office released a 10-pager guidelines and protocols for reopening, and then on May 8th followed up with a 19-page document that has a little bit more industry-specific guidance and guidelines for businesses for reopening. So, first, obviously, restaurants are encouraged to continue the curbside delivery and or pickup operations if they can. But for dine-in, that's really what changed with phase one, and will change again with phase two. But the key requirements are that reservations should be required when practicable. If you have guests that are waiting to be seated, they should wait outside in their cars or in an appropriately socially distanced area. Restaurants shall require employees to wear face coverings and should encourage customers to wear face coverings as well. Employees or employers must perform a daily assessment of employees for any COVID-19 type symptoms, fever, cough, trouble breathing, and require your employees to stay at home if they are symptomatic. Tables or booths should be spaced at least 6 feet apart. In-person or on-premises dining is limited to no more than 50% of available seating capacity, excluding bar seating. Bar areas are supposed to be closed for seating. And then, as I just said, bar tops remain closed. Buffets and self-serve stations should also remain closed. Beyond the requirements, all businesses are also encouraged to have hand sanitizer and sanitizing products readily available. Frequently perform enhanced environmental cleaning and disinfecting of commonly touched surfaces. Designate with signage, tape, cones, or by other means 6 feet of spacing for employees and guests to maintain the appropriate social distancing. Remind employees to stay home if they have COVID-19 type symptoms. Close common areas where personnel are likely to congregate, and consider implementing separate operating hours for the elderly and vulnerable populations. So one really key note, though, is in addition to the state requirements, you really want to make sure you check your county requirements and your local health district requirements for all operating guidelines that they might have, because one of the key things here is that local jurisdictions can impose stricter requirements than the state. What I covered just now were just the state requirements. So taking a look at some of the other states and some of the areas around Nevada, some best practices that we had put together were just, you want to deep clean your restaurant daily. You might even need to establish new hours so that you could close earlier and really do that deep clean. When you're cleaning, you want to try to clean the surface first with soap and water to actually get it clean, and then use an EPA approved COVID-19 disinfectant. And there's an N list that US EPA maintains for COVID-19 effective disinfectants. You might also consider seating times, like at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, have seatings and get customers sort of used to this idea of reasonable, regular seating times, just to help stretch out service for yourself and to maintain that sort of flow while also having the social distance requirement met. Eliminating tables to create the space. One rule of thumb that we've seen is that have no more than 10 diners per 500 square feet. But again, you want to have all of the tables at least 6 feet apart. Consider installing plexiglass or the acrylic panels so that you have a barrier between booths and tables, or especially between the host station and the payment station. Provide touchless hand sanitizer stations, and then also, if you can, it's a good idea to have your host or hostess open the doors, guide guests to their seats and hand sanitizer stations. That way you have fewer people touching the door handles. It's just another best practice. Another thing that you might want to consider is taking a look at the utensils and tableware. You might want to assign a dedicated staff member to clean and sanitize each table or booth once the guests have departed. Once new utensils have been placed on the table or tableware, staff should try to avoid touching those items. Only bus once and use tubs with lids to transport the dirty utensils or tableware to the dishwashing area. Consider face shields for your dishwashers, where you're going to have that water spray coming off of the utensils and the plates and the cups. Also, one thing that you might consider is using disposable utensils and tableware. I don't know if folks saw that the CDC came out with additional guidance. It was 60-page guidance yesterday. They do have interim guidance for restaurants and bars. One of the things that they talk about is using disposable utensils and tableware. I don't know if Nevada and our local health districts will adopt something like that or not. You also consider your menus, replacing the reusable menus that everybody's touching with chalkboards or TV screens, flat panels that display your menu, making sure that your phone is, or that your website is mobile friendly so that people can view your menu on their phone. Also, maybe add POS stations so that each server might have their own, so that you don't have a bunch of different people contacting the same POS stations. Use touchless non-signature payment systems and have customers pay through an app on their phone. You also want to consider your employees. And so again, you're going to have to provide them and require them to wear face coverings. You might want to consider washable and reusable face coverings. Maybe have some fun with it. Print your name and your logo on the face coverings. And then, like I mentioned before, in certain areas like the dishwashing area, you might want to consider plastic face shields as well. Also, you might want to provide your employees with nitrile gloves, or at a minimum, provide them instruction on proper hand hygiene to practice between interactions with each table. Just making sure that, that as they interact with the guest and may touch the guest hand or something like that, that they are either wearing gloves or practice good hand hygiene. You might want to consider having no-touch thermometers so that you can check your employee's temperature before they start their shift. Have anybody with over 100-degree temperature go home for the day, and keep a log of that. You want to be able to document and demonstrate to any regulatory authorities that you are doing the daily assessments. And then another best practice is just staggering the lunches or breaks to maintain social distancing. For guests, Again, you're going to want to require reservations, have the customers wait outside or in their cars until their table is ready. Keep a log of the reservations and the guest contact information so that you can do contact tracing should somebody ultimately test positive for COVID-19 who has visited your restaurant, or if a staff member were to test positive. Also, consider limiting tables to groups of 5 and try to keep them all from the same household. Mark off 6-foot distances on the floor to maintain space at the host and payment stations. Encourage your guests to wear face coverings, maybe provide complimentary masks for guests not arriving with their own. And then again, encourage guests in high risk groups to either continue to order takeout or delivery in the early phases of reopening, maybe until we get to phase 2 or phase 3, and provide signage at the entrance to the restaurant just to encourage patients or patrons to do a self-assessment, and if they do have any symptoms, to order takeout or delivery instead of coming in for that night. And then finally, I wouldn't be the environmental guy if I didn't bring up environmental sustainability. And I just wanted to raise the point that, as you consider how to meet the new phase 1 guidelines and beyond, it's absolutely critical that you meet the important health guidelines that are out there, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to abandon your environmental sustainability initiatives. And a good reason not to abandon it is that when you can minimize waste, you can minimize your waste disposal cost. And the word waste, as we know, it implies that somewhere in the process you're inefficient, you're generating a waste, and no business wants to be wasteful. So things like your menus, if you're encouraged to have single-use menus, don't print up too many disposable ones, but instead do what I had mentioned before. Consider chalkboards, grease boards, flat panels, making sure that your menu is online and easy to read in a format on your phone. Tableware, if you do buy disposables, don't buy too many. If you can, consider the regular reusable utensils and tableware, and just use best practices. Bus just once, use containers with lids, have the bussers and dishwashers wear a mask and plastic face shields. Takeout and delivery, a lot of people are going home where they've got utensils and can eat without needing the disposables. So ask if your guest needs the utensils. If they don't put them in the bag. PPE, if you're providing your staff with face coverings, don't buy too many of the single use, but again, purchase those washable, reusable face coverings and have fun with them. Food waste, I suggest taking a look at your menu and your menu costing. Are you preparing dishes that go unsold? Are you prepping food that just that doesn't end up getting into dishes on a regular basis? So are there ways to trim your menu, especially right now as everybody's looking to be as profitable as possible? Are there ways to reduce your menu to the most popular and most profitable items to save on that prep waste? Continue to recycle, train your staff on how to dispose of some of these new waste items like the PPE, the face mask, and the nitrile gloves. If you are continuing to recycle, just make sure that that PPE does not go into the recycling bins, because that contaminates the recycling. Make sure that the used PPE goes into the trash. And then finally, disinfectants. Obviously this is a really critical piece of operating your business right now, and you absolutely make sure you follow the state and local health guidelines. But try not to use too much. More isn't necessarily better. Use just the right amount that will kill any germs or viruses that are on any surfaces. And make sure you follow the appropriate dwell times. If you wet something down and then immediately wipe it dry, that usually is ineffective. You want to make sure that the surface looks wet and is wet for the recommended dwell time. A lot of times the dwell time will be 10 minutes. So you want to make sure that you're following the proper dwell time, and also between guests, giving your tables and other high touch surfaces enough time for the dwell time to do its job. So with that, what I would like to do now is hand the program over to Mark Esty. Chef Mark Esty graciously agreed to participate this morning and talk a little bit about what these new guidelines have meant to him and the Reno local food group. They operate 5 different restaurants and have event and catering. As you've gone into this new normal, Mark, we're all very interested in hearing what your experience has been and any tips that you can share with the attendees this morning.
Absolutely. I want to say thanks for having me here, Chris, and I appreciate being asked to come on and share kind of our experience, strength, and hope, as I would say right now. You covered all the great points that we used as a group to sit down and rebuild our programs, if you will. We've always had SOPs, our standard operating procedures. We have binders and books, and we tell you how to open the restaurant, close the restaurant. Every single thing that goes on here has been documented over the last 10 years, and it's something that we rely on every day. Adding another layer, and that's what these requirements, suggestions, and best practices are, is something that our group took very seriously. We knew from the start, when we let go over 200 of our employees, managers, everybody was laid off, and we knew that we were in for a long ride here. And we went right to work about what are we going to do and how are we going to come back. That's what our main goal was, is can we weather the storm? So, we got into the to-go game. We pivoted. None of our restaurants are really strong in to-go. We're all dine-in. You'd say like finer casual food. So it doesn't play. Our to-go sales have never been a big part of our revenues. So when we pivoted to to-go, we really focused on some of the things in there. We cut our menu down tremendously. We just brought back the best sellers. We brought back in a few people and took them off unemployment and just used the bare minimum of people to support the operations. And as we did that, we started to kind of craft our plan. And I've shared the plan with you. And any attendee here is welcome to take a look at it. It's a roadmap of taking all the information we've been given, and then we kind of put it into our operation. And I've shared this with over 25 of my other restaurant friends around the region, and they've shared their programs with us. And it's really kind of cool to see everyone kind of working together as we go through these next steps. So a couple of the kind of key guidelines we took out were, it was kind of twofold before we even got back to thinking about business. It was, how do we make our employees feel safe? Because they're the ones who got laid off. And then, some were making more money than they were making when they were working. Some had to take care of their children at home. Some were enjoying the freedom of not having to work. And some couldn't wait to get back into the mix. So we kept in touch with them over the last 10 weeks. And we brought back all the right people over the last 2 weeks as we started to kind of rehire everyone, the right people back. The cool thing is that these guidelines, once the governor gave, basically how I took it was the governor said, here's the state suggestion, we're putting it into the counties, which I think is the smartest, best thing for him to do. And then Washoe County was, within 24 hours, we had a phenomenal list of, 3 levels of suggestions. One's non-negotiable, one's a hard suggestion, another one is best practices. And we kind of were able to implement them into the plan that we've already had sitting here waiting. The casinos are great. The casinos have been sharing the information from the get-go. That's where we started to see, well, if the casinos are sharing, why don't we get on, even though we're a smaller group, we need to kind of take the same approach of health and safety of our employees. Once we got our employees to know that they were going to be safe, it was a lot easier to bring them back. They came in, they knew we gave them plenty of time to retrain. We had our restaurants clean top to bottom. We had our restaurants sanitized with this company called BioSeal out there. We had the employees come in and be a part of the training. We role played. We tried to make it fun. We added stickers and buttons and what we call in the restaurant business flair to the uniform to kind of try to add some personality back. And I'll tell you, we're about to start our 3rd day today with 4 of our restaurants reopen. And, with 50% capacity, never meant it was going to be 50% revenue. It could be more revenue, could be less revenue. But the weather getting ready to be warmer this weekend, the fact that we've kind of got our systems down now, I'm expecting to see a much busier time. So our staff is ready. And the next thing we prepared for was we're ready to receive guests. So the idea now would be is, can we receive guests? And are we ready to receive guests? And the answer was a resounding yes. The thing we learned is sometimes we have to retrain these guests to understand what we're doing here. I likened it to the fact when I went to the grocery store or I went to the hardware store during this time, and I noticed like I was acting a little bit differently. I wasn't sure. What are people doing with their masks? Are people gathering in the aisles? Did I avoid them? Was I afraid? How did I feel? I noticed this uncertainty on the things I was doing. So it was really interesting that we kind of trained our people to really look out for that from our guests. And so far, so good. We've had really phenomenal reception from everybody who's come back. I think what we're seeing is some people aren't ready to come back, and they're the ones doing to-goes. They're the ones doing curbside still. They're calling and asking about our procedures. They're calling and asking about if they can see pictures and some of the things we're doing, and we're happily sharing those things. The other half of the coin is some people don't want to really feel, they want to feel exactly the way they did before they came to the restaurant. So that being said, we want them to also feel safe. We're not going to put any of our staff at risk just to make somebody feel like we're not in these times. It's a fact of life right now we're dealing with, and I believe it's just a phase. So we are following every letter, every rule, every suggestion to the letter of the T. We don't want to make any mistakes. We do not want anything bad or to get worse. So we're going to follow all the rules. We're going to try to be leaders in the community. We're going to share what we're doing. We're going to listen to what feedback comes in. We're going to think of creative ideas. And then once we kind of have our customers and our people ready, we're ready to receive guests and get back to hospitality. So I think we're in the early stages of that. We haven't really, we haven't been super busy. I would say that our typical sales on a Mondays and Tuesdays at our restaurants, we're at like 60% of what we normally were doing pre-COVID. So that was a good indicator that, as time's going to go on, we can see ourselves picking back up. And, we're just going to take it day by day, step by step. We're going to listen. We're going to learn. We're going to try to be really smart about what we do. We're going to try to be leaders in the community, kind of try to lead the restaurant groups. And as we get back our 4 restaurants, and eventually we'll open up our 5th restaurant, and then eventually our catering company will come back. And, we're here for the long haul. And, that's basically been our mantra, if you will. And it's kind of been the way we run our businesses before this. We just applied the things that we applied our culture, we applied our mission statement to this reopening the same way that we applied it to as we closed down, in the same way we applied to all the new restaurants that we open up. So any thoughts about any of that?
Yeah, well, Mark, thank you. I guess number one, I just want to remind folks that you can type in any questions that you might have for Mark right now. Mark, one that was typed in, it's not a question, it's more a comment. Someone thanking you for your work with supporting the server and the food service community. And then the question that I have for you, the PPE that's required, are you finding what you need? Have you had any difficulties finding the PPE? I know, the hospitals and healthcare all have had issues. I know you're not needing to purchase the same level, but have you had any challenges with getting the PPE?
Well, that's a really great question. First off, I'm going to go back to the first comment that you mentioned, was the fact that we got involved with this. We started a program here called Nevada HIP. We got involved with Feed Our Heroes, Rounds for Heroes, feeding ER docs, feeding homeless, feeding people during all this time. And that led us into another program called Delivery with Dignity, which is run by the Lieutenant Governor right now. And I'm kind of like the restaurant person. And then Michael Bergier, also, who's from the United Way. The 3 of us kind of spearhead this program. And that's been really, really cool so far. Been able to help a lot of people. So I call that social capital. We're building social capital within our community. We've always done that. And of course, in times of crisis, we really think it's even more important to kind of double down our efforts, double down our energies, and double down the ability. We know how to feed people, and that's what we're here to do. So I appreciate someone for commenting on that, and we'll continue to do these things until we run out of money or the need is gone. Finding PPE, we've been very lucky. Again, we were really following the national news, we were following the regional news, we were following, what was going on in the bigger cities, and we were seeing where people were getting masks and buying masks, and we just got all the cloth masks. And we were really, there's a couple of companies, we jumped in early, we helped support the companies, we bought $15 masks where $5 went to the first responders, and the masks for us were $10 itself. And so we really tried to jump in early on that. We've collected those, and now a lot of times we found if you're just buying in small amounts, so we bought a few every week to kind of build up our stock, and they're all reusable, all washable. I did hook into it with the gentleman, and we're waiting because they were stuck in customs. We bought 1,000 disposable surgical masks. Those are going to be used for people who either forget their masks or they're dirty, their other ones get dirty, or somebody comes in and it's a customer and they want a mask. We can easily give them one. We're able to find those for about 60 cents a piece. So things along those lines. Spreading out the tables, that wasn't a problem. US Foods, who's one of our broadline distributors, they come out with a COVID killer, if you will. It's a disinfectant, about as ecologically safe as humanly possible. And they just added that to all our restaurant outlets right now. So we're using that. It kills 99.99999%. And we're using that everywhere to kind of sanitize. Soap and water is the biggest thing we try to promote here. We have a hand wash station. We come in, we're suggesting you wash your hands. Sanitizer is great, but I think you mentioned it. It's not necessarily the best thing. We really don't want to kill off all these germs and make ourselves so germophobic that we're going to have a common cold could possibly get us next year, So we're trying to be smart about soap and water. We're trying to be smart about the amount of sanitizer we're using. We're using the proper washing techniques. I mean, restaurants, that's what we're known for. We're really trained on how to be clean, how to be smart. Our servers have really enjoyed it. We try to keep it fun with the PPE, and making sure that we have the proper masks, making sure that everyone's using it as the ownership. Our managers, myself, I'm wearing the mask. We're not hugging. We're hot air fiving. We're foot tapping. We're sometimes elbow to elbow, pump, fist bump. We're making sure we keep everything spread out. We're trying to keep it nice and controlled for the most part. So lead by example. That's kind of our mantra at all our restaurants. So we have not found much trouble with it, and we haven't found trouble when if everyone's wearing the mask, no one can say, well, he's not wearing a mask or she's not wearing a mask. So it's been beneficial for us to find that if we lead by example and everyone kind of stays on it, we hold each other accountable. So far, so good.
Excellent, thank you. I guess along the lines of the PPE supply, another question that had come in was just asking about disposables, especially with the new CDC suggestions yesterday. Are you buying a lot of disposables? Are you having any issues? Is that harder to come by nowadays?
Well, it's a great question. I hate disposables. I'm a green fanatic. I try to keep our restaurants as green as humanly possible and have for 25 years. From using every part of the animal to every part of the vegetable to no scrap, no waste, recycle everything under the sun. We still recycle our cardboard at our own cost to make sure that we keep everything going the right way. The one thing that we have run into is when during this to-go time, bags have become like gold. No one can find to-go bags. So that's been a little bit difficult. It's certain style pans have been a little bit difficult and containers. But as far as paper plates and greenware, napkins, forks, all that kind of stuff, we're just going to continue to use our regular china glass of silver, and we have washing stations and cleaning stations, and everything's constantly sanitized and checked and monitored. So we're going to continue to go along those lines. We are using the disposable menus. We have made a few of our menus laminated that we can kind of wash every time. We do have the menu online. You can click on a menu, a QR code, and you can see the menus. So we're really trying to limit our footprint as much as humanly possible. So we haven't seen much, but we haven't tried to buy too much either. We don't really want to get away too far of who we are. I think people expect when they come back to the restaurant with, in regards to making sure we meet all the requirements, but they're also going to expect a certain type of atmosphere, a certain type of service, and a certain type of, they want to come back and have that warm welcome hug again. They don't want to come into a fully foreign space that's, basically, bubble wrap. They want to be boy in the bubble in this case.
Right. And have you found, as your supply chain been continuing to operate normally as you've gone through this process?
No. The flat answer on that is no. We supply products to people. We have a full scale butcher shop, and we do all pork products, so sausages, salamis, pâtés, specialty stuff, all that stuff. Our sales have quadrupled in the last 10 weeks in that area. Our breads, our pastas, all the things we make are wholesale. And then at the same time, we don't really use that much meat on the commodity market. We're using, whole pigs. We're using Bentley Ranch beef in Gardnerville, in Minden, Gardnerville. So, our beef supply for ground beef is protected. A lot of our steaks are protected. They've seen a tremendous increase, but since we've been customers with them so long, we've not had to suffer any of the shortages. So everything we've needed as we reopened, they've been able to supply us. Now, pork got a little bit tricky for a little while, but the prices have already kind of started to bring down and supplies come up. Beef, though, is going to be an issue. If you're a restaurant that specializes in beef, Angus beef, Midwest beef, you're going to be looking for new sources, because I just heard ground beef is looking at coming up on $5-6 a pound this week, and that's not even the peak. And that includes like a place like Burger Me, which is a restaurant that I used to own. I mean, I know those guys are out. Actually, they're pretty smart. I know they went into this thing eyes open. They were trying to secure other beef from different places. So, you have to be quick on your feet. I can see people charging a surcharge on certain things, as if prices go up too much, you don't want to change your whole pricing structure, but you might see a beef surcharge on certain restaurants. I know people are charging a PPE surcharge on certain things. They're saying, "Oh, we need some help with our PPE."
Oh wow, okay, interesting. One specific question that came in for you. First, the person who posed the question did want to thank you for the inspiration that you've been providing the last couple of months. But the specific question that they wanted to ask was, as restaurants do start to reopening, if you had one key employee who the entire staff comes in contact with, maybe somebody like yourself, if that key employee then tests positive for COVID, obviously you'd quarantine that person, but does it mean that everyone else who came in contact with the person must quarantine? Does the restaurant need to fully close again? What are your thoughts on that kind of scenario?
That's a great question. Luckily, so far in our procedures, when we reopened, we scan our employees' temperature. We ask them to self-check. We ask them to be honest if they traveled anywhere outside of their regions, because we're kind of asking everybody we are in our world, we're all still self-quarantining at home when we're not here. So we've asked if anyone's going to change, if anyone's going to go to a family gathering or go to a place they're not supposed to be, we're asking them to tell us to protect our business. And our employees understand that, this is the thin edge of the wedge. There's not much of a case of, there's not much room for error here, if you will. So our procedure says if someone does not feel well, and if someone has a fever, we send them home. And if we send them home, we ask them to quarantine until they either A, feel better, or B, go get a test. And we're asking them to get tests on their own. We're not requiring them to get a test. We won't let them back to work. We won't let anyone work with the temperature. And we won't let anyone work who tells us they went someplace that we don't believe is safe. If they feel like, well, I could have been exposed, I may have been exposed, we've asked people to stay home. For example, yesterday, my butcher said, hey, I just feel a little bit lightheaded. So we had him sit down for a couple hours. And he felt better. He didn't have a temperature. He self-checked, he self-stopped, and then he came back to work and he was absolutely fine. So we're just trying to be really aware. We haven't had that happen yet, But if we did find a place, if we did have one of our people who came in and was working here and possibly exposed us, even with the fact that we're wearing masks, even with the fact that we're wearing gloves, I would have to say we would have to close down. We would have to all go get tested, and we'd have to say it would be a different case scenario because now we risk the chance of exposure, from an internal standpoint. The flip side of that is a customer could come in here and do the exact same thing. But again, this case here, I think that's the whole idea of keeping everyone far apart. We're trying to minimize that because we're planning on that being the case, but we're taking every precaution so it's not the case.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, you've obviously really thought this through, so definitely we all appreciate that.
Yeah.
So I don't have any additional specific questions for you right now, Mark. But hopefully you can stay on the line. We'll shift over to Rod Jorgensen. But folks who are on the webinar, if you think of any additional questions, please just type them in, and we'll be able to ask Mark as we go along here. But right now, what I'd like to do, number one, thank you, Mark. And number two, I'd like to introduce Rod Jorgensen with the Nevada SBDC. Rod's a senior business development advisor, and he's been here at the SBDC for a very long time and assisting businesses. The SBDC is a fully statewide program that offers free and confidential business consulting assistance. And Rod, I'd like to have you just see if you can talk a little bit about some of the business issues that are facing everyone, particularly restaurants right now.
Okay, thank you, Chris. I'm going to primarily start talking about the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program and the Paycheck Protection Program to start off, because I've had to wrap my head around those over the last 2 months pretty carefully. First, on the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, none of us really know at this point if it still has money to lend or if in fact they're out of money because they're processing such a large volume of disaster loans that until they kind of get to some even keel, they're not going to know, are they going to have to go back to Congress for additional money, or is there going to be enough currently? The latest round of stimulus is specifically targeting agribusiness. So if you're not agribusiness, you'll get rejected as far as your application. But I would urge everyone, if you have not already filed or applied for an economic injury disaster loan, that you keep looking at their site, keep attempting, just in case they run out of ag businesses that they need to process, and they can look at taking on new multi-industry applications. There have been some IDLs, I call them IDLs, economic injury disaster loans, that have been closing. I just got notification as we were on this webinar that currently what the SBA is doing is they're no longer advancing. There was an advanced component to this where you could get an advance of $1,000 per employee up to $10,000. They're no longer advancing that money until the application has been submitted and approved. So that's a bit of a change, because all of a sudden I was hearing clients tell me they weren't getting the advance. They applied for the economic injury disaster loan month and a half, 2 months ago, and hadn't heard a thing, let alone gotten an advance. Now we kind of know why that is the case. Early on, people were getting the advance based on the number of employees, and then all of a sudden it fell into a black hole. Nobody was hearing anything. That will work its way through. I'm having a few clients, as I said, that have currently been able to complete the EIDL process. I can't tell you how much longer it's going to take, but I'll bet it's a month or two before that volume is under control. So moving on from there to the PPP, because the PPP is something that has really piqued the interest of many, many businesses. And we had one round on the PPP, and then we had the second round. And currently, as of this morning, there were 193 billion that had been funded in the second round of the PPP stimulus, and there was still about 117 billion left. I think that 117 billion is going to grow because the drop dead date was was either yesterday or today, where if you were no longer going to take the PPP, you had to turn it back in if you would. So I think there'll be many more billions that will be coming online for the PPP. On Monday morning, the PPP loan forgiveness application came out, and I would urge all of you that have applied for and been approved for a PPP to find that application. It's on our SBDC website as well as a variety of other websites, and study through it. There's two specific components that I wanted to mention on it. And the one is the safe harbor rule. And that basically says that as of today, if you get back to your full-time equivalent employees by June 30th, it will be forgiven. Doesn't necessarily mean you spent all of the payroll dollars by June 30th, but you got back to your full-time equivalents that you had when you applied for the PPP. So if you're a small operation, you had 8 full-time equivalent employees. If you get back to the 8 by the end of June, you will be forgiven. The other part of it is, I'm less of a fan of this, but if you get a PPP and you, in writing, attempt to recall your employees, if they do not come back, they will count towards your forgiveness. Where the challenge is that there are very high prospects that if they're currently drawing unemployment, you attempt to recall them, they choose not to come back, they have jeopardized their unemployment and in fact probably will have to pay it back. So that's kind of a gut decision on the part of the business owner. Other things on the PPP, just as of this morning, it's pretty obvious that Congress is going to have to extend the period of time over which the PPP is utilized. Currently, you need to use the PPP from the date you acquire the money for 8 weeks. 75% of that has to be used for payroll. Because there are so many business owners that in states where they are not yet allowed to open, they may have gotten a PPP, they have no one to pay with it. So they're seriously looking at extending it from 8 weeks to, I think President Trump wants to move it up to 24 weeks. So it'll probably be somewhere in between there, but they will extend the length of time over which that PPP can be used. On the PPP, the SBDC, we are having a webinar on June 3rd at 2 p.m. And we've hired a woman out of Illinois who has created an Excel spreadsheet on how to keep track of your PPP so that you can meet the 75% threshold. I also think that they may look at the 75% threshold and reduce it, but at this point, it's still 75%. So that webinar is June 3rd at 2 o'clock. What I'm urging individuals to do on the PPP is put the PPP funds in a separate account. And then as you're paying payroll, take the exact amount of that payroll out of that separate account into your payroll account, paying it out. That way you can easily track all of the expenses that you are paying out of the PPP account to make certain that they are eligible expenses that will allow you to get the largest forgiveness possible. Let's see. I think that's about all I've got on the formal side of things. Any questions, Chris?
No, well, Rod and Mark. Mark, I'm wondering, did you go after EIDL or PPP loan for the Reno local food group?
Well, that was great information. I think that really simplified a really difficult thing for a lot of people. I hope everyone who's listening understands, like, that's the best explanation I've heard in a long time. We did. We applied. We have I'm very lucky that I have some great partners. My business partner, Tanya McCaffrey, got right on the EIDL and the PPP. And, we planned for the worst and hoped for the best. And we received notification on a little bit early on some of the PPP. on the EIDL. Then we got some PPP notification, and we still were waiting. And then we did start to see like a little bit of money come, but we waited till we really felt like we knew we were going to get before we made our execution plan to come back. So the way we spend that's going to be really up to our CFO, and we're going to try to operate our business the best that we humanly can. And then if we have to return money, we'll return money. One, we did get something where it said, the banks are keeping good track of it. We did get approved for, let's say we got approved for a $500,000 EIL for all the restaurants. Once we got some PPP, that number came down to like 150. So, and we feel like we didn't get too much, we didn't get too little, and we got to be really smart how we spend this. And we need to make sure we check all the boxes because we don't want to be stuck with a case of holding the bag, if you will.
Yeah, this is Rod again, Mark. It looks like as of about, I'm guessing 2 to 3 weeks ago, they ended up having to adjust the maximum EIDLs down to the 150 cap because that's the most anybody's hearing lately.
Yeah. So we got excited at one point. We were like, oh, here comes 500 grand. Oh my God, And then all of a sudden it was like, oops. So we planned for the worst, hope for the best, and we got right in the middle. So I can't complain.
Well, great, thanks, and good luck with the loans. And Rod, are there any other general business tips or suggestions that you have for attendees?
Yeah, Chris, you asked me about that earlier before we were on, and as I was listening to Mark, I was thinking, oh my God, who am I to even attempt to purvey that I have any experience on the restaurant side of things? So I really wanted to ask Mark this question. Hey, Mark, we all know that, let's say it's an evening sit-down restaurant, and Thursday, Friday, Saturday nights are going to be your big nights. Is there any method besides online scheduling? And one of the things I did like hearing Chris talk about was, scheduling at 7 o'clock and 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock. But is there any variable pricing models that you have thought about where you could try to even out your volume throughout a week's period?
Well, that's a great question. I love that. I wish there is in big metropolitan cities. There's a great new system that's been developed by one of the best restaurants groups in America, in my book. It's the Alinea Group, and they created something called TOK, T-O-K, and that basically allows you to buy restaurant reservations, and you pay based on the premium of when you're having these reservations. So in big metropolitan cities and phenomenal restaurants, that's everywhere. In Reno, they would hang me up on a flagpole and whip my butt if I ever tried to do that here. Okay, so let's be square about that, all right? They don't even want to, if anyone's going to do it, it would be me, and I'm not going to even try it. Don't get me started on my partners. I want to try it, but I won't.
Well,
so,
my whole idea was, a family of 5 wants to go out, and even though they would prefer to go out on a Friday or Saturday night, they choose a Tuesday night because the variable pricing models cause them to pick the Tuesday night.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, that's what we're faced with, and I have been the last 25 years of owning restaurants is, the reservations, even when we take reservations sometimes on a Friday and Saturday night, every restaurant that we have takes reservations and we take walk-ins. So we're blessed enough to have a system that we've worked with for 20 years. So we understand how that works. I could see restaurants that don't understand reservations, that being very difficult for them. But, every time I take a reservation, I kind of want to say on a Friday night at 8 o'clock and there's 12 people, I want to be like, well, you got any kids there? But you can't. It's not socially acceptable in a region like ours, but in other regions it is. So you don't want to alienate your customers. We're actually taking
online reservations are going to become even more important for most established places?
I mean, we've taken online reservations since the first restaurant ever opened up in 2002. So I'm coming up on 18 years of online reservations. I couldn't operate a business without it. But that's just a style that we have, So the idea of the time seatings of 6, 7, 8, 9, that's a great idea. Starting off early is a great idea. I've seen a few restaurants around here. There's some smaller restaurants that are definitely gonna have to make some adjustments. You do get yourself caught up sometimes. We have a system and flow for us. We know how long our meals take usually. We have we save certain tables to walk-ins. We have community tables that we save. for people, back in the olden days when we used to be able to sit next to each other. We have bar seating soon, hopefully being added back in here eventually. So, I think online reservations will be good for good spots, but it does cause you a little bit of trouble. It does take a little bit more to manage. So, I think it could be some new technology for people. The same way that we didn't have online ordering, that we did add new technology. That's cool to us, and we're going to keep it forever now. Maybe people will add online reservations, and they'll be able to keep it to help enhance their business going forward.
Terrific. Thanks, Mark. Hey, Rod, one question that came in for you. It was, is it beneficial to go directly to your business bank to ask for, help with accelerating or assisting in the PPP processing?
Well, some of the banks have capped out. I can't speak to which banks have capped out. Right now, I know GNCU, Greater Nevada Credit Union, was still taking applications as of the end of this last week. I'm not directing people there, but I had heard, and I haven't verified, that some of the larger institutions had topped out as to the PPP program and weren't taking any more applications. I do know places like Cabbage and Lendio, not a fan, but they have processed a good number of PPPs. And it's not a bait and switch with them, because they can only legitimately take the fees that the SBA allows on the PPP program. PayPal even is into the game. So yeah, your primary bank should be your first one that you seek out, but there are a plethora of others that are still processing PPPs.
Okay, all right, thanks. Yeah, Mark, the question came in, I think more directed to you, and it kind of gets to the what you alluded to, sort of educating consumers about the new ways of doing things, but also educating employees. And the question was, do you think there's intangible value in educating the employees who are working in takeout as well as dine-in, that being diligent in washing their hands and being obvious about it would help build confidence with the guest? You kind of referenced, we're in some cases where you've seen servers handle cash with the same gloves that they use for food, or with another table or another takeout guest, or keep using the same gloved hands with the same pen over and over for signing. What are your thoughts on being very obvious about the sanitary practices and the value of doing that?
Well, that's a great observation by the person who asked that question, and it's a good question. The easy answer is the fact that we train our people to pretend that they're on camera the whole entire time, and that the police are looking for them to be doing any practices that aren't right. So on the idea of erring on the side of being extra cautious, one of the things is with 50% dining, you still have the same amount of staff, and so they're less busy. So, which is something that we want to be committed to, because it's a new way for them to have to handle money, to be wearing gloves and changing gloves and washing hands and wearing a mask and doing the different things and kind of helping. I wouldn't say educate the guests, because I think each guest has their own mind how they want to be, and we want to be able to receive them any way they want to be received. We just want the people who are, I'm going to use the word kind of hawkeyes, are watching for problems. We kind of told everybody to think that everyone's watching for them to mess up, including myself, including all our managers, including every single bartender, busser, server, cook. To pretend that everyone's watching you and waiting for you to screw up. And with that kind of mindset, I think we've been extra cautious. And if we do all those things right, then no one's going to call us out on Facebook, and no one's going to call us out on social media, or no one's going to write a Yelp review. No one's going to say they saw the chef picking his nose, or whatever the heck they're going to say. The idea is we need to all be aware that this is a really hypersensitive time. And we already follow these things to a certain degree, but we're on Front Street now. So it's like you're on stage, and even the person in the corner who you don't know is watching you. So that's the way we're approaching it. And I think that's the only way you're going to build a place. I know some places that are requiring guests to wear masks, or so I'm on the board of the co-op. The co-op is not requiring, it's telling everybody to self-check, but not requiring you to wear a mask. Some people want people to wear a mask. And we said, we're not going to force anybody to wear a mask. So, you walk that line between forcing somebody, not forcing somebody, And then the customers are going to feel where they feel the most comfortable to go, and that's where they'll spend their money.
All right. Yeah, absolutely. Excellent points. Yeah, you alluded to it before. I mean, are there messaging that you want to get out to consumers, to guests, how to be a better or a good guest in the new normal and as phase 1 and phase 2 of reopening occurs?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. The thing I would say, and I'm not trying to sound too preachery into that, but it's like, have grace, have passion, compassion, have understanding. Understand that it's new for everybody, but at the same time, you still need to be treated right. You still need to be, we're, at least in the hospitality industry, we're still here to make you feel good. So don't have your expectations so low, but understand that everyone's kind of learning. Voice your concerns or suggestions, or voice your pleasure. Be as kind with your words of all the good things that you can be with the ways that people can improve. Every business is going to be different. Every person is going to be a little bit different. So we just want to give everyone the space to do what they need to do. And one of the things is, if you're not ready to go out, and if you're looking to tear down businesses, stay home. Wait till you're ready. You know what I mean? Like, just maybe you're not ready. And I know some restaurants that weren't ready. We didn't reopen until 8 days after we could have, because we weren't ready, but now we are. So we're here for the long haul. We're going to hang on there and stick it out. So, I just think if everyone just takes a little bit of a breather, it's probably one of the biggest things that we'll all learn from these. I'm calling it 10 weeks. These 10 weeks that we're kind of coming out of, that we all can just kind of take a minute, look around, smell the roses, appreciate better things in life, change the things that you want to make your life better with. You know what I mean? If that means not being so stressed out when you go out to shop or go to a restaurant, then good for you.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate that. We're getting near the end of our time here for this morning's webinar. We just wanted to post some resources for you. Again, there's the state, obviously your local health districts, the new CDC guidelines that just came out yesterday, and then also the Nevada SBDC. Check the Nevada SBDC website regularly. There are business resiliency resources. There are tip sheets there. There's one restaurant tip sheet. As Rod mentioned, there's a webinar coming up on PPP loan management issues on June 3rd at 2 o'clock. Make sure you sign up for that one if you have a PPP loan. On the side of your screen, you should have an area for handouts, and the tip sheet is available there as one of the handouts from this webinar. And Mark also mentioned the Reno Local Food Group's plan for reopening, and he's graciously has made it public. So that's also one of the handouts that's available on the webinar. And we are recording this webinar, so hopefully we'll be able to get this posted on the SBDC website soon. One last closing question that we have for you, and it'll be part of a survey. When you log out of the webinar, there will be a 2-question survey. And then just so you know, you'll also get an email with an SBDC survey on what your thoughts were about this morning's webinar. But one question we had for folks is if you would be interested in an ongoing roundtable so that restaurant owners can keep on discussing the challenges that they're having with reopening and just share ideas. If that's something that you might be interested in, the SBDC would be willing to try to help facilitate that kind of discussion, and just want to get your feedback on that idea. And with that, I would like to thank again Rod Jorgensen for presenting, and also Chef Mark Estey for presenting this morning. I've definitely learned a lot. I hope all of you have as well. I thank everyone for attending, and stay safe to stay open.
Thanks for having me. Have a great day.
You too.
Ciao.
Bye.